Hey there, new types. This week's video is going to be a bit of a different one, maybe the first of many to come. By some demand, I'm going to comment on the ban restricted list just a little, but mostly I wanted to make this video to counter some of the sentiment from the community regarding its effect on aggro and where it's going to take us in the metagame going forward. I'll preface this with the fact that these are all just the opinions of one guy. I could be right, I could be wrong, and you're more than welcome to disagree with me. Further, none of this is calling out a particular creator, title, or opinion negatively. It's just another hat thrown in the pile with some explanations I hope some find helpful. The main thing I want to address is the really basic question of, is aggro dead? And in a lot of cases, the statement or sentiment that aggro is actually dead. This has come up a lot with the other videos I've seen and a lot of the discussions surrounding the recent changes. And I think a lot of people are misunderstanding the effects of the ban restricted list and perhaps maybe oversimplifying it a bit too much. The real quick answer for me is no, aggro is not dead and it isn't going anywhere. What was killed was the overall consistency, but that just means to me it was lowered in potency. The actual potential for high rolling is still there, and it's very much a threat to you, whether you see it or not, and you should be prepared for it. While I try to keep this video concise and avoid rambling on too much, I'm going to try and explain what the changes mean to me and what I think should be explained better for the sake of discussion and knowledge, and my take on the metagame as a result. I also don't want to discourage anyone from being excited in the coming format for GD05. I am quite happy with the ban and restricted announcement. I think it may have gone heavier than I would like, especially in light of best of 3, but I'd rather see risky changes made more than the do nothing ones like the initial changes we saw with the number of copies of Corsica you could run in a deck. But let's get this started off. I'll break things down with some slides and sections to the video and do my best to explain things from my perspective going forward. We're going to get into this here with the basic gist of things. The ban list or restrictions that we are facing here are that you're not able to have 2 of these level 2 1 cost units that have no effect. So the vanilla 2/2s, you also can only use one of these cards no matter what. So if you're running the Gray's custom or the gym, you can only run one or the other in 4. You can't do 2 gyms, you can't do 2 Gray's customs together. You can do only 2 gyms if that's all you want, but you will not be able to go 1 gym, 1 Nemo, 1 Hyzak, 1 Grays. You can't do that. It has to be that card only. Not too crazy, but it is a restriction that you should be mindful of. And I know some people have talked about running like as many of the different colors or different cards they can just for the fun of it. Unfortunately, can't do that. It's not really a malicious thing either. It's really just for tournament play and for consistency and the ability to tell if someone has more than one type of a card in their deck when they shouldn't, especially with a fresh ban and restricted list. The big things that are of note is that cards with effects are usable. This means that depending on the color combination, you're going to be able to run a total of 12 level 2 1 cost units. And previously, decks were running between 16 to 20. That was part of the whole consistency of their turns and why they were able to play 1 or 2 at a time. They're still going to be able to do that. We'll cover that in the curve the next step, but I'm just saying right now that the color combinations that you can do is if you do purple, green, white, or blue in any combination there. They have enough units that you can run 12 level 2 1 drops. Importantly, the blue has a pair ban, which is you can't run 2 of the same units with the same effect as well. So the M1 Ashtray Shrike and the Gun Tank both have the ability when you deploy, you deal 1 damage to target rested enemy unit. You can only have 4 of one of these. Just like the vanillas, you can't do 2 gun tanks, 2 M1 Astros. You have to do 4 or 4. I did include the enact. It's not probably going to be a thing. The true color combinations are probably going to be blue, green, and purple. The AEU enact is just really not that good. It's serviceable. People may try and run it. There are definitely hyper aggro decks in the white coloring that probably will want to run it. I think white purple, white green is going to be a thing people do try to run. I think white purple is probably the one. I may build a deck around it. I've tooled it. It's not really that good, but it is kind of funny and it is hyper aggro. But that's really all you need to know right now. That's the basics, so to speak. You're only going to be able to have 12 level 2 one cost units. All right. As I brought up in the last slide, we have an example of a recent placing deck, second place, nothing to sneeze at, of Aggro or Blurple, the boogeyman of the format. It has a lot of the ban cards. It has Amuro and Mika. You can't do that anymore. It has Anksha. That card is gone. But the major thing I want to point out here is the curve it presents. It is running a total of 16 level 2 cost 1 units. That's not possible anymore. It is 12. That means you freed up a slot, but it also means that this deck's curve has shifted slightly. It means that you don't get that hyper consistency of dropping a pile of level 2s on the board for cheap. It does mean that now you have to play your win condition at a slower curve than before. What was previously a turn 5 lock with a turn 6 kill consistently is closer now to turn 7 or 8 for aggro. That's not necessarily bad because other decks are still playing on a fair curve as well. But this does give them the chance. This means you're not closing out the game on freedom or on the wing 0 turn or before the wing 0 turn. Consistently, that is. You are still able to do it. I'm going to show you decks that take advantage of a new curve and the current meta that still do very consistently beat on turn 6 or 7. One of them, I think, is one to really look out for. But the highlight here is this Blurple list. This Blurple list is a really solid example of what goes on with these, or what goes on with these, what we call hyper aggro. This is hyper aggro to a T, right? This is what people will think of when they're talking about hyper aggro or 1 year war. But I think this one was the best example I could pull because it showed a bunch of cards that are missing and a really good demonstration of the deck not existing as it used to. We're going to get this started with, I think, my very quick and dirty example of what new Blurple might look like. And this capitalizes on Barbatos' first form and the Victory Gundam as a draw engine. But the major thing I want to highlight here, this is, not quite a deck tech showcase, right? I just want to show the new curve here and also the new tech that's going to come out because of the lack of Amuro in a deck. You did see it with the Sword Impulse in the last list that I showed, but I think if you're going to build into a new pair of pilots, the Victory is probably a natural adjustment for Blurple. And you can see here we have 12 level 2 1 cost units and a healthy level 3 2 cost suite, along with a fairly reasonable top end with the V dash and the V2 being things that close the game out. That means, this isn't a be all end all to what aggro is going to look like, but it is a very good example of Blurple adjusting and still playing on a very similar curve. And this is a deck that can close the game out on turn 6. It can be very, very dangerous. It can be very, very strong. And it's very fast if it does the right things. It plays pretty well with the control. There's a lot of, your old school control elements. It's got gun tanks, adapt. It's got Mika, and those cards can, ping things down. Gun easy, rest something, especially those early blockers that we're going to see a ton of in this new meta. And Exia is also another card that, while it has the drawback of discarding 2 off the top of your deck when it dies, it has the ability to punch up. this card will eat through blockers that they probably don't want to put a pilot on and pair to protect it. This thing will be a 2/1 that they want to either ping or they're going to use something to trade into it later, but it should get some shield damage in, it should get some base damage in. It can punch up into blockers. It's pretty good. It's an overall strong card. Now, the other thing here is there are other color combinations, and we're going to get to that next. This is another color combination. I think these two decks, the Blurple and the green-purple list, are the more aggressive of the decks you're going to find in this current format, at least to start. There are other aggressive style decks, but I think the way they are built and the way they live or die is going to be based on a meta, and you're probably going to see them in week 2 to 3, depending on what shows up. However, this is a list that forgoes the ping, but still has a pile of units that get thrown out. It's got a lot of consistency, and it's got ways to clear out blockers with Fatal Strike. On top of that, the level 7 Sazabi often comes down on level 7 and ends the game. If you can go Sazabi with level 3 Char, you are probably winning the game. That makes this very lethal because this comes down a turn earlier than Freedom. And because you have something like Char in there, you have high maneuver in the deck. That lets you punch through a lot of things and be very aggressive. The other thing is you're running the level 5 Char, which recycles the axis space. And hey, that's actually really, really powerful as a base that comes back and has a potential to put another card from your hand on the field. Granted, there's only one target, but it's still a useful card, and the more important thing is it comes back as a repeatable base. And for Char, that's actually really good because if you have Shield still, bringing that card back on a pair is basically card draw for you. And for a deck like this, you are just trying to get going, keep the pressure on, force your opponents to deal with your units, and swing into them as often as you possibly can. You will see here that the Goof, the level 2 cost 3/2, is in the deck. Mostly because it is another way to play on an aggressive curve. It's also Zeon. That means you don't whiff on your Char Zaku 2, but it also has the 3 power, which is important for breaking that EX base. You'll see that the Zeong is a 4 here, and that's mostly because card advantage off of it is very strong, and you have 8 Chars in this deck, so it basically has, haste. It can attack on the turn you pair it. It's going to get you tokens, and it's going to hit your opponent in the face. In terms of a front-loaded aggro deck, this is probably one you should expect to see. I think it's going to be very close to this iteration. The core is very much there. It's going to be 8 Chars. You got his Char Zaku. You've got the Zeongs, and you've got the Sazabi at the top. And the Zaku 2s and the Exias. And the whatever you decide for your unit. People have, thought maybe just Char in there. The level 5 one is just kind of an add-on, and you don't really need him. You might be running something like the Zanzibar to cheat cards out from your hand. All fine and good. You can do whatever you really want. But the important feature of this deck is that it still features an aggressive curve that will kill you on turn 6 if you fail to answer it, or they see the right answers, like high maneuver or fatal strike, or they pressure you so hard that by the time they have 2 units left on board and they're able to drop a Sazabi with the Char to get the high maneuver and clear you out, you're going to lose on turn 7. And with those 2 decks out of the way, I'm going to talk about the curve that I brought up in the opening here and also what I was exemplifying with those 2 decks. The curve is still very similar. The difference is it's less consistent. You're going to see the same lines of play that you saw in GD04 out of Blurple and 1 Year War. And the crazy thing is, that's only because they're missing 4 cards. Most of them are running 16 to 20, so it's between 4 to 8 cards, but most of those decks are only running 16, maybe 18. So we're not far off. We're still in a very dangerous place with aggro, and that only means the card quality of the cards you're facing are actually higher. So when they do nut draw, the cards they are putting down are better in general. And that's something also you can't really sneeze on, right? You have to consider the fact that the cards that they're playing are better than vanillas now. You're only going to see vanillas every now and then. And while the vanillas are dangerous, these cards with effects are very relevant and tend to get them more value than not. So now that aggro is forced to play cards with better value in them, you have to deal with that as well, right? If you're playing against aggro, you have to be able to handle that, such as early aggression, and you have to be able to deal with it when you're playing aggro yourself. So it's really simple. You start with a Zaku 2, any level 2 1 cost going second, right? You add on another 2 units or 3 units, and then at level 4, you add on another 2 units or more, depending on how your curve has gone. You might just do Zaku 2 plus Char's Zaku 2 on your level 2, save your EX because you're going to hand dump the next turn. However, decks basically hand dumping at level 3 are going to be very, very, very common. And they will be common just like on the going first turn. You're not going to stop seeing the level 2, I play 2 level 2s. Now it shifts a little bit because they will just play something like the Goof with 3 AP, and then on their level 3 play another 1 to 2 units. For your level 3, it changes a little bit, but you're still looking at like 3 to 4 units on level 3 for your opponent if they're going first. That's still very dangerous. More importantly, when they get to the level 5, it's usually more units and then a Fatal Strike if they're running purple. A lot of these decks are. You still are going to get the Adapt Mika 1-drop play on anything with purple still. That's still possible. Your level 4 is still a lethal turn with or without Amuro. Again, a lot of these just change based on consistency. And that is very, very potent. And that is very important not to forget. The consistency did die, and that helps everyone, right? It helps everyone except aggro. It didn't kill it. And people who think it's dead are going to get caught by basically the same things that we saw in 04 and earlier, and we're going to suffer for it, or they're going to suffer for it, rather. I've been already seeing a ton of these decks brought out that don't really address the fact that hyper aggro, or the new form of hyper aggro, is going to be coming for them. I think that you're going to see a lot of these hyper aggro lists alongside Strike Freedom in the first 2 weeks of this game. And the people who succeed in these first 2 weeks, granted, there might not be many tournaments to play in, but if you are looking to do well and hit the ground running in these first 2 weeks, you really have to keep these into account. I think that it's definitely a new meta for sure, but what really changed was consistency and what curve people are playing on. It's made a lot more decks viable, absolutely. It really hasn't shifted what the meta is going to change in a vacuum. You're still going to have hyper aggro. You're going to have mid range. You're going to have control. The only thing is, you're going to see more of the other decks. You're still going to have to find a way to deal with all of these together. You still have to do it in GD04. The boogeyman right now is basically aggro. That's what everyone's calling the boogeyman. It's what everyone's complaining about. It's what everyone's saying, oh, I don't get to play the game. Unfortunately, I think the bad news is you're still not going to if you don't build right. Talking about building right, this is a really, really quick watch list of things to look out for, things to remember, things that are going to catch you off guard besides hyper aggro. Neo Zeon in the bird mode here basically are here to represent ramp. Ramp in general in these type of mid-range formats where everyone is kind of underestimating hyper aggro are things you're going to find and things you're still going to want to beat because they're going to be very strong. Neo Zeon in this format, you can take the current Neo Zeon list without any GD05 additions, and it's probably going to be very, very good in the GD05 meta. It's gotten a few additions. You have that Airframe Raid, which I think is the biggest one, but you've also gotten a couple other cards that may fit in there depending on what you want to run. Especially if you're running a Neo Zeon version, the consistency of Neo Zeon with Airframe and Overflowing is just going to get higher. Green is still pretty good. And now that you don't have to worry about hyper aggro as much, or people feel that they don't have to worry about hyper aggro as much, or it's less consistent, people are going to try and run things like bird mode, and they're going to try and ramp up to Neo Zeon. And if they do, they're going to take the game away. Red-green is something to look out for. Green-purple, I've seen lists of green-purple that run widespread annihilation. Things like that are going to be strong, and things like that are going to catch you off guard. You're going to have to understand the play patterns, and you're going to be needing your deck to be prepared to play against them. Naturally, we talked about hyper aggro and how aggro is not dead, but with the format being shifted to a mid-range level, blockers are going to get worse. I've said this in discussions elsewhere. I've put in comments. I've talked about it with other people in my play group, my testing group. Blockers is going to represent very similar to GD01 and GD02, where people were complaining about Wing Zero and the blocker slot meta with Kira and Ailstrike and Amuro. This is coming back. This is not changing. Blockers got better. Everyone's saying, oh yeah, well, we have more tools to deal with blockers now. And that is true. Blockers got more tools as well. And the fact that the meta has shifted to a curve that scales in their favor means they're going to get a lot more card advantage than you realize. They also play around certain answers that we talk about, such as Fatal Strike and Widespread Annihilation. They're still very potent cards, and they have another incredible line of play right now, which is the Graceful Demeanor into Ailstrike. Something I think you need to be aware of is your blocker opponent going on their level 3 or 4. If they don't play anything and you've got 2 targets on board, they're going to hit you with that Graceful Demeanor at the end of your turn or their turn, or after the end of your plays. They're going to do something with Graceful Demeanor. And they have turns to go blocker, blocker, blocker pass, Graceful Demeanor, next turn, Ailstrike pair, bounce another unit, and now you're 3 units behind on tempo. It's scary, it's dangerous, and it's going to catch people with their pants down if they're not ready for it. I think that line of play is going to ruin a lot of people's days, just like the Strike Freedom will. However, that's a line of play that plays in the Strike Freedom deck, and it's going to be one that you're going to see lead up to things where they absolutely demolish boards on curve and then set up on level 7 another pair of blockers past the turn, or they play a blocker and Show of Resolve, play it on curve, they're waiting for their level 8, and then they go and drop Freedom, target 2 cards, play Akira, and then just demolish a board, draw a bunch of cards, and really make you regret the tempo loss. And tempo is basically back in this format. It's really strong again, and Ale got even stronger. It was very good before. I harp on, Kira Slop, but now Ale is even better. And speaking of that, Kira Slop, Kira, Jesus, Yamato. That card, that character, that archetype, orb, blue-white blockers, it's going to be everywhere. It's probably going to be one of the best decks in the format, if not the deck to beat in the format. And you're going to have a way to deal with it. And if your deck can't deal with it, you're going to be caught off guard and you're not going to do very well. This card will be everywhere, even if it's not very good. Kira and the Strike Freedom will be everywhere. You will face it in tournaments. You will face it at locals. It's going to be there. It's not going to stop. And it's probably going to be in decks that are basically blocker slop. And they will have pretty good curves and pretty good tools to deal with aggro or the mid-range more than aggro. And then finally, I mentioned it in the build before, but the Sazabi and Char level 3 pilot. This combo ends games. A player setting it up can do exactly what I just said with the Strike Freedom, but a turn earlier. They will play cards down, and then you might even see them go set up a pair of Zaku 2s on the board, and then put level 3 Char on Sazabi. They swing in for suppression that with high maneuver, they blow up a token or something that's already swung maybe, kill a blocker, and then they just finish the game with the last hit. It's going to be annoying, and I think that, high maneuver and suppression is going to be one of those things that make people very unhappy. I'm kind of here for it because I enjoy it. I think that's going to be really funny to play. I don't think it's unbeatable. Don't get me wrong. I think it's very strong, and I don't think this is off people's radar. I think the Strike Freedom and the Sazabi with level 3 Char are very much things that people are considering. I know it was one of the easiest early combos people identified, but I do think that it might be a little overlooked right now because of all the Strike Freedom, the MF G Fighter type, the new Blurple additions, the attempts to run, existing decks that weren't very good or were oppressed before, and people are going to forget about this. People are going to be hyped on the new Gundam. People are going to try green white Char, anything like that, just because they're trying something different. But I think Hyper Aggro is here to stay, and we need to make sure, or at least I want to make sure that people who are watching this channel understand that I'm not saying Hyper Aggro is unbeatable, but I'm saying, man, you guys gotta stop saying it's dead. It's not dead. It's far from dead. It's still a problem, and by problem I mean a threat. It's still a threat, right? Hyper Aggro is going to still define a lot of your deck building choices. I hope that was helpful. If you have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like and the channel a subscribe. GD05 looks like it's going to be a fantastic set, and the cards released are definitely going to spice up this new meta that's been forced on us. This is the time to try out a variety of cool and different things, so I hope you are as excited as I am for Freedom Ascension, and I look forward to covering it for you here. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.